there's a decent component where if you have more means and you are a good person, that enables you more. So me kind of coming behind, not only in my own business and trying to create a successful business myself, but also in the vein of coming behind other people and trying to help them create the businesses that they want. That's been a key aspect of it for me, is that it's a big portion of who I've been from those days in junior high all the way up till now. That outward giving, that helpfulness has always been a big part of what that looks like. What's changed is, as I have mastered more skills, the ways that I'm able to help people have changed. And where I might be most valuable in helping people has changed. It always goes back to that same point of, I come alive when I help other people live their best life.
Heroes are an inspiring group of people. Every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen, to everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell, from the doctor saving lives at your local hospital, to the war veteran down the street who risked his life for our freedom, to the police officers and the firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling. But there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored: the entrepreneur, the creator, the producer. The ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what, I can fix that. I can help people. I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world. Others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks on the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to The Hero Show. My name is Richard Matthews, and I am live on the line with one of my favorite guests to date. This is a good friend of mine. We've been friends for, I don't know, going on 12 or 13 years now. Business partners in a lot of different areas, and work on a bunch of cool different things together over the years. We've even traveled together. We've had kids sort of staggered together over our life. I'm going to introduce you to Zach Hammer. Zach, you there?
I am here. How's it going, Richard?
It is going good. So for those of you who don't know, Zach Hammer is the founder and CEO of Real Estate Growth Hackers. And Real Estate Growth Hackers is a company that works with real estate agents to help them do modern marketing really, really well. Like if you are in the real estate market and you want to learn how to knock the socks off of your market, right? And do some really high level marketing and bring in leads, Zach is your guy. And the Real Estate Growth Hackers Inner Circle, I've watched him build that from the ground up and seen some of the training on the back end. Really good stuff. So Zach, to start the interview off, why don't you tell me what it is that you are known for? What do people come to you for? What do you help people do?
Yeah, so I'd say there's probably a couple of different facets to that. On the surface level, a lot of what you just described, you know, I do describe myself as specializing in real estate marketing. So a lot of people know me for that, come to me for help on that. Do that in a whole variety of ways with a lot of courses, some services, some like agency type work, but yeah, so helping folks with that. But I'd say on a more kind of general basis, I tend to be known as a person who just is fairly giving of help, and is always when I'm able to willing to share what I know, share what I can help, and honestly, that's a lot of where I've ended up where I am today. A lot of the opportunities that I found have come as a result of me just proactively helping.
Yeah, and there's a lot of truth to that for anyone who's worked with Zach before. He's one of those guys that will give until it hurts. And it's worked out really well for him and his business. And if you're in his network, he's known for that. And it's a really cool thing to have sort of watched you and your business grow over the years because of that ability. And I know it's something that I learned a lot from you, and it's helped grow my business in that vein. So my first real question for you though is your origin story, right? So we talk on this show all the time how every hero has their origin stories, where you started to realize that you were different, that maybe you had superpowers and maybe you could use them to help other people. So how did you get started in your entrepreneurial career?
Yeah, so I'd say, I mean, shoot, it depends on how far back we want to go, but
well, I go back to when I was like 13, so you can go back as far as you want.
So I'd say when I first started sort of figuring out that who I was and some of the aspects about me that might have made me a bit unique. A lot of that started happening in junior high and high school. I even then was very often a person that other people would come to for help. I had a lot of friends that would seek my advice, would seek my guidance on things, and at the time, that was largely relationships and spiritual and emotional kind of help. It was not so much the marketing and tactical stuff that I help people a lot with today. But yeah, I had a lot of those experiences. I had one friend in particular that we would very often just go on long drives because they were going through a hard time in their life throughout high school, and we would just talk, and I would just be there for them. And it was during that time I was really involved with our church's youth group, and that was a big passion of mine. And so that actually led to me feeling called into the ministry. And that's what brought me out to where you and I met, where we went to college together in Missouri at Central Christian College of the Bible. And yeah, I went there in the goal of pursuing a career in the ministry, right? I wanted to be a pastor. And while I was there, I kind of further went through this journey of discovery of what I really thought it meant to be a leader in the church, what that looked like, what are models that made most sense to me, and I kind of moved through different concepts. And one of the models that I was passionate about for a long time was the idea of the house church, that instead of having a big organization with a big building that needs support and lots of staff, and kind of this thing that the church in the U.S. has kind of become today, that instead you use kind of a simpler model where it's smaller groups meeting together in homes. There's less organization, less structure, less cost to it, and it's there's more relationship. But and we had while I was in college, we set up and successfully ran a decent sized house church in the area around the college there. But as I dove deeper into it, I started realizing that some of the problems that I was looking to solve with that model wasn't exactly solved with the house church concept. That you still had this sense of obligation rather than this uplifting of relationships. That you still ended up doing the same thing, where it was kind of this rote participation instead of real true relationships. And around that same time, you and I both, I think you were actually the one who introduced me to the book, but we around the same time we had read a book called so you don't want to go to church anymore. And that book kind of, at that point, it sort of unlocked for me, it's like, okay, like there's a reality of ministry, of spirituality, of being a Christian that isn't tied to doing
what we call church nowadays.
Yeah. The thing that we call church. Now, church is definitely still a thing, but going back to more of the biblical concept of it, it's more about that group of people, the ecclesia, the group of people who are Christians, who are living out their lives, following Christ, coming together in fellowship, working together, toward spiritual goals. And it's a whole lot less about this organization that has buildings and pastors and that kind of thing. And it's a lot more about kind of this living group of people. Anyway, before that, so while we were still in the vein of doing the house church stuff, I had realized that if I was going to lead house churches, that I would need a source of income, because by nature, the house church sort of structure doesn't lend toward you having a paid job as the pastor, right? Like it's a small group of people, less able to financially support somebody. So generally you would have to support yourself financially. And so around that time, that's actually where we got involved in business together. I came on under your downline when we were working with the team. It's a MLM organization for anybody who's not familiar with it. And we had some great experiences in that. One of the things though that came of that was that our upline had talked to us about a concept that he had heard about called attraction marketing, and it was basically implementing internet marketing tactics in order to build your downline. So using internet marketing to grow an MLM business, and that sort of started us down this vein of looking at marketing, diving into marketing. So this was all kind of going on at the same time as doing the house church stuff, and what I ended up discovering, and this is a big part of I think for you too, that like that started pushing you into this specific aspect of where we've gone. But what I ended up discovering is that I had a really big passion for the marketing. Like I loved the concepts. It kind of jived with who I was and what I was up to. And so when the piece was removed from the puzzle of me feeling like in order for me to like live a fulfilled life, I had to be a pastor. When that piece was removed, when I didn't feel that obligation anymore, it was like it unlocked my ability to say, well, this other thing that I have become passionate about, like maybe that's part of what I could pursue to move forward. And so that's what ended up happening during that time. You and I both, Richard, we were working on some businesses together, sometimes not, sometimes together. That's kind of the story of our relationship for the past decade or so. But yeah, and we built up a decently successful kind of local agency helping small local businesses. We ended up running into some trouble with that in the time frame of we moved. My father passed away, and a whole lot of things went on in our life that kind of pushed us out of that world and then into this world of both you and I were seeking jobs where we get, at the time we were largely having to bootstrap ourselves, right? So all of the marketing concepts that we were learning, we had relied on like free methods that took a lot of sweat equity. And we'd never really gotten to play with paid ads and paid media. So we decided that we kind of wanted to learn on somebody else's dime. And that's why we took the jobs. We took the jobs to say, hey, like I want to apply these concepts. I want somebody else to pay for the ad budget. And that way we can learn some more of these concepts. And yeah, from the time that we made the decision to the time that we had a job, it reminded me, you always remember this.
So mine was 4 weeks, yours was 6, right? So it was December 28th. Right. We shut the doors in our business. By February 4th, I had a C-level director of marketing position. And by the end of February, you had a director of marketing position for a real estate firm.
Exactly. And so that's, during that time, I knew nothing about real estate. All I knew was marketing, internet marketing, direct response marketing, that kind of stuff. But while I was there, I learned real estate. And so, I applied the marketing concepts that I had learned and had become passionate about. And while I was there, we doubled in business every year that I was there. I averaged the 5x their lead flow on average, and cut their cost per lead in half. But the reality is, I am not a wonderful employee. I am much more an entrepreneur at heart, and so inevitably it ended up that I needed to part ways. We left on good terms. I didn't leave him high and dry or whatnot. I left amicably and everything. It wasn't like an ousting. But I felt compelled to go back out on my own, and that's where Real Estate Growth Hackers came from. So for the past 6 years or so, 7 years, I guess at this point, maybe, essentially that journey has been, at the beginning, I was saying yes to everyone, whatever anybody, anything in the real estate world that somebody wanted help with, I said yes to, and we did it. And we did some really cool things over that period of time, but I sort of started feeling like, where I was able to add the most value, what made me come most alive, was when I got the opportunity to try new ideas, see what worked, and then kind of share that back out to my community. And that's really where what Real Estate Growth Hackers most is today, where we have a lot of courses and trainings, and I essentially teach people how to leverage awesome cutting edge marketing in the real estate business. That's the process of where we got to where we are today.
Yeah, and it's a really fun story, and like I have the added benefit as your interviewer today of knowing your story really, really intimately, because we sort of went through a lot of that stuff together. So I want to dive into a couple of things that I don't usually get to dive into on these episodes, because I think it's really fascinating, particularly the discussion about understanding where you fit with spiritually and how business fits into that. Right, because it's not. It comes up every once in a while. If you've listened to a lot of my shows, it's probably pretty obvious that I am a believer in Christ, that I'm a Christian, and that Zach is as well. But a lot of times our discussion focuses on the entrepreneurial aspect, and one of the things that I find fascinating is how we as entrepreneurs, how do we tie sort of that kind of like the mentality that like, hey, I have a calling to what I'm doing, right? A calling to be, to follow the word of God and those kind of things. And how does that sort of fit in with Christianity? How does that fit in with like actually running a business? And because you and I both sort of went through the same thing. Like I went to college, to Bible college. I particularly went to Bible college for a couple of reasons. One, I thought I was sticking it to the man by going to a Christian college instead of like some other thing. But I had specific skills I wanted to learn, and like I wanted to learn how to read the Bible in Greek and Hebrew. And I thought that because of what I had learned from that, I wanted to go and be a pastor, right? Same kind of thing as you did. And when I actually started actually like reading and understanding scriptures, you're like, oh. Like this isn't the picture doesn't fit, right? The picture that you've been shown of what we call church versus like what's actually shown in scripture. And I know we've had this discussion before. It's like it seemed like everyone in Christianity is waiting for God to paint them a picture of like, hey, here's your calling, go forth and do this, right?
Right.
The Hero Show will be right back. Hey there, fellow podcaster. Having a weekly audio and video show on all the major online networks that builds your brand, creates fame, and drives sales for your business doesn't have to be hard. I know it feels that way because you've tried managing your show internally and realize how resource intensive it can be. You felt the pain of pouring 8 to 10 hours of work into just getting 1 hour of content published and promoted all over the place. You see the drain on your resources, but you do it anyways because you know how powerful it is. Heck, you've probably even tried some of those automated solutions and ended up with stuff that makes your brand look cheesy and cheap. That's not helping grow your business. Don't give up though. The struggle ends now. Introducing Push Button Podcasts, a done-for-you service that will help you get your show out every single week without you lifting a finger after you've pushed that stop record button. We handle everything else: uploading, editing, transcribing, writing, research, graphics, publication, and promotion, all done by real humans who know, understand, and care about your brand almost as much as you do. Empowered by our own proprietary technology, our team will let you get back to doing what you love while we handle the rest. Check us out at pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero for 10% off the lifetime of your service with us, and see the power of having an audio and video podcast growing and driving micro celebrity status and business in your niche without you having to lift more than a finger to push that stop record button. Again, that's pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero. See you there. And now, back to the Hero Show. And you and I sort of came down in this idea that like, hey, what the thing that you should be doing is the thing that makes you come alive, right? It's that spark of divinity in you that makes you come alive. So I'm curious, what are your sort of thoughts on that, on like sort of how that fits together and how actually for you building a business actually fulfills the calling you have for following Christ?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a fantastic question. I think the reality is, everybody wants there to be like a set path in terms of like you said, they want it painted out for you. They want it to be a very clear, paint by number sort of thing where there's a right answer for it and there's a right way to do it. And I think it's a little bit more vague than that, right? Like, I don't know if I had to live a life where I ended up specializing in marketing for real estate, right? But the journey that I went on kind of ended up having me there. But I've always been able to stay true to some of the key aspects that do really make me come alive, right? Which is I love helping people. I love helping people get what they want to out of life. And the reality is that money and success in business, they're not the most important things in the world. But like having the money to do what you want to ranks up there with oxygen, right? If you don't have it, you're not really able to do the things that you want to. And sure, like you go through phases in your life or whatnot. Been there lots of times of not having enough, and you could still have a good life. It's not like that's necessary for 100%, but like to enact changes in the world, to experience all that this world has to offer, as well as to even be able to proactively help others. There's a decent component where if you have more means and you are a good person, that enables you more. So me kind of coming behind not only in my own business and trying to create a successful business myself, but also in the vein of coming behind other people and trying to help them create the businesses that they want. That's been a key aspect of it for me, is that it's still, if a big aspect, if a big portion of who I've been kind of, from those days in junior high all the way up till now, like there's that outward giving, that helpfulness has always been a big part of looks like. What's changed is, as I have mastered more skills, the ways that I'm able to help people have changed, and where I might be most valuable in helping people has changed. So yeah, I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but it always goes back to that same point of I come alive when I help other people live their best life, and that's been a big part of it. How I'm able to do that has changed.
Yeah, so it's an interesting discussion because, right, like in the Christian space, you have a lot of people that are like they're like I'm waiting to hear my calling, right, without realizing that you probably already know what it is, right? You probably have something that makes you come alive. Go do that, right? Go do that thing. But like just in the sphere of entrepreneurship, right? One of the things, like if you go into Corinthians, it talks about we all have our specific gifts or skills, right? Some people are teachers, some people are preachers, some people are whatever, right? And it goes through the gifts of the Spirit, so to speak. But if you extend that out to like the things that like people have skills in, you have people like yourself and myself and people who are listening to this show and other guests we have on this show who have a particular tolerance for risk that is not common, right? And so much so that I would consider that almost a gift, right? And you have one of the things that always bothered me as a child in church was watching all the people take their $5 and put it in the little basket going around the thing. And I was like, I saw even as a young kid, I was like, there's two types of people in the world when it comes to church and giving. There's the people who put their money in the basket going around, and there's the people who put their names on the building at the top. Right. And I was like, I want to be the kind of person who can put his name on a building. Right. When I was a kid, I thought, building a big church building was the thing. Right. As I've grown up and sort of grown in my relationship, like I understand that what that means now is like there are the type of people that like when you build a big successful business and you're doing things like, hey, our supplement brand, for instance, gives a percentage of every sale to Vitamin Angels. Right. To the tune of, at some point, I plan on that becoming thousands upon thousands of dollars, right, that you can give to things. And like, you look at entrepreneurs all over the place and the things that they can do on a large scale. There's something to the idea that entrepreneurs have a gift for risk tolerance that allows them to do big things. And so anyways, my whole point with that is that sometimes building a business can certainly be a calling from God.
Absolutely, because I mean, like the reality is, you mentioned, and I think it's fair, and I don't know, I don't even think it's a lack of being humble or whatnot. I really do. There are times where I give until it hurts. I go out of my way to help somebody else more than I go out of the way to help myself, and like that's an aspect of my personality that has created some successful aspects in my business, right? Like I've had that, but it's not like I have to actively work at it. I have to actively say like I don't know that I'm comfortable giving up time that I might normally watch Netflix because I've got this person that needs this help and I'm willing to give them that time, right? Like that's an aspect. It's similar to risk tolerance, where it's just it naturally, it naturally creates that resolve. Similarly, that risk tolerance aspect. I am like, shoot. Like my wife wouldn't necessarily be happy of my level for risk tolerance, but shoot, like half of a good portion of the money that we got for our wedding went into buying like books and materials to learn how to have a better business while we were doing MLM stuff. Half the time that I get money for something, it goes back into like, I'm going to invest in like making this business better and in either bettering my skills or bettering my opportunities, because I have goals and dreams and things that I'm moving toward. A lot of that is in impacting other people. I have a very strong belief that if I make other people's lives better, my life will naturally get better in the process. I put a lot of risk, financially, time risk into things that I think a lot of people would say, hey, like you'd be better off if you just took a job and watch Netflix. I was like, yeah, well, probably, but I don't know. That's not what I want to do.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not to say that someone who's not running a business doesn't have their own callings and doing those things. Like it's just that
Absolutely.
for some people, namely our listeners and our guests,
Right.
entrepreneurship doesn't have to be in contention with your beliefs, right? It doesn't have to be in
Absolutely.
contention with, and it's one of the reasons why I built this show initially, right? And it's something that is very common in the entrepreneur world, that because culturally, entrepreneurs are looked at as villains, right?
Right.
It's like you could probably pull up any kids show that you watch, and like whatever the common theme and like the problem they're looking is like, hey, some entrepreneur is dumping oil and killing all the ducks, right? And entrepreneurs are regularly villainized, and so the natural outcropping of that is people who become entrepreneurs a lot of times struggle with the idea that I'm working to create a profit, I'm working to create something in my business, I'm working to create things, and have negative feelings associated with that. And it's more pronounced when you have someone who is religious, who is a Christian, saying like, hey, I know I want to build this thing, but like every time, like I struggle sales. I struggle with creating a profit. I struggle with doing some of the required aspects of my business because they have this cultural disconnect,
Right.
with, I feel like I'm being evil if I'm an entrepreneur. And I've always hated that, which is why we created this show. So anyways, I think that sort of gives a really good picture of sort of like the behind the scenes thinking behind where the Hero Show comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. And like in that vein, one of the examples that's recently come up, right now, during this interview, we're still in the midst of this weird coronavirus stuff that's going on in the world. That's the time frame that we're in, and there are a lot of businesses that are struggling, right? Like there's a lot of the shutdowns have forced certain types of businesses to struggle. Other types are thriving because they're well positioned for this. But the reality is that there's a lot of hurting people right now, in just because of how we've decided to handle this. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about how some of those businesses could adapt and what you could do. And the reality is, like, I've got a lot of ideas for a lot of different things, but I can't help everybody. But one of the easiest ways to make it so that it makes sense for me to put my time into it is if there's enough of a financial incentive to say that this is a better use of my time than putting my time elsewhere, where I can help the people I'm used to helping and make more money and whatever, right? Like if I'm able to make enough money off of it, then it makes sense for me to go and help those people. So what's interesting is that starts to mean that the places where you can profitably like solve problems, you end up solving those problems, right? Like those are the high profit, high potential problems get solved because there's that systematic what's the sustainable level of effort, right? It's worth somebody going and solving it. It's like no matter how good somebody's heart is, it is very hard for somebody to literally all the time give without getting anything in return, because that doesn't work, right? Like we need
it's unsustainable.
Yeah, it's not a sustainable system. It doesn't feed itself. It doesn't stay alive. And so even without, like, I've mentioned this. Shoot, I've had conversations with my wife. It's like I would love to take the time and go and help these people, but like sometimes I'm at a state in my business or in my finances where it's like I need to put the mask on myself before I try and put the mask on the other hurting people, right? Like I have to make sure that the thing that I have going on will stay alive before I can go out and have extra to give, right? Anyway, so I don't know. It's kind of a convoluted way of coming around to it, but yeah, I fully believe that if you do business right, you make money and you help people. Like both happen. They aren't counteropposed. You don't have a successful business that isn't helping people. Like that those don't last. That doesn't stick around.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about a capitalist society where right. It's a voluntary exchange of goods and services. Everyone has to win or it doesn't work. And it's such an important point. And it's interesting to me that if you look at, particularly in the US, our founding fathers were all following a Christian doctrine to build the capitalist society that we have. So it stands to reason then that it makes a lot of sense that building a business and being an entrepreneur falls in line well with your Christian beliefs. So.
Absolutely. And again, I mean, going back to, you had said it earlier, I don't think everybody is like, I don't think in order to be a good person, you have to be an entrepreneur.
No, I said there's all the gifts, some of them.
And it's not even necessarily that like being an entrepreneur is somehow like better or whatnot, right? Because having a high risk tolerance means that sometimes you get your ass handed to you. And that, being willing to take on the risk means that sometimes you have to experience the consequences of those risks. So for a lot of people, you might be happier if you don't take on those risks. So
one of my favorite like naive moments in my life, I say moment, it was a long time, from childhood all the way through to maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I used to think that anyone could be an entrepreneur. Right. And it was, if you remember the Ratatouille movie, right, it was Ratatouille that changed my mind. Right. And it was the whole idea that anyone could be a chef. I can't remember the guy's name, Gaston or whatever. No, Gaston's from Beauty and the Beast. But anyways, the main chef in that. Either. Yeah. It's not that anyone could be a chef, but that a great chef can come from anywhere. And I feel like entrepreneurship is the same way, right? It's not that anyone can be an entrepreneur, because not anyone can, right? You have certain risk tolerances and skill sets that go into being an entrepreneur, but a great entrepreneur can come from anywhere. So I think that's a good way to sort of think about that idea.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
yeah. So my next question for you has to do with your superpowers. And what's fun is if you've been listening to the show at all lately, and one of the things that I've been saying a lot is that I've been reframing this question, and Zach is actually the reason that I reframed this question on our show. So this hopefully will be a more interesting segment than normal, but it's basically your superpower is what you do, build, or offer this world that helps solve problems for people. And if you look at your set of skills that you've developed over your life, you probably have one skill, one zone of genius, so to speak, that really energizes the rest of what you do and the rest of the skills you have. And you probably remember it was a good 4-hour discussion in a coffee shop that sort of, made us sort of come to that conclusion and change this aspect of the show. But for you, what is that superpower?
Yeah, and honestly, you are a big part of the reason for why I think about this the way I do, in light of what I think my superpower is.
We had so much fun recording this episode, we had to break it into 2 parts. Check back next week for part 2 of this exciting conversation.